The following program is made possible by Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
They are some of the best and brightest students at their school. So why has a national testing agency told them their hard work doesn't count? We look at the testing controversy at Mills High School. The game is education testing. The game is on. I'm Mark Simon, and welcome to the game. 286 students at Mills High School, juniors and seniors, took more than 600 advanced placement tests in May, but were told just a few weeks ago that all of the hard work and all the test results have been invalidated. Educational Testing Service, the national organization that administers the AP tests, said there were violations of the seating protocols when the tests were taken. To talk about this, we are joined by two Mills students who had their test scores wiped off the books. Jessica Liang, a Mills graduate who is going to be going to Yale very shortly. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you for being here. And Grant Murphy, who is also a Mills graduate heading to Emory University in Georgia. Grant, thanks for joining us. And Nancy Fineman, an attorney with the law firm of Cotchett, Pitre, and McCarthy, also a mother of one of the students so affected, and who has been brought in to advise the students and some very irate parents and school officials about what they might be able to do next. All three of you, thank you for being here. Let's start with the students.
Mark, I'm sorry, I'm actually not a parent of an affected student. I have two sons, one just graduated from Cal Berkeley and one that's going to be a sophomore there. But I'm a Peninsula resident, very concerned
and
about
familiar
Mills.
with the AP testing process.
Absolutely.
Well, would you like another kid? Maybe we can just invent one for you here.
From what I've met, they're all super, so I'd be glad to. Anyone wants to have another mother, come see me.
So, briefly, let's talk a little bit. What AP tests did you take? Each of you would like to answer that question, and tell me what you do to prepare for those tests. Jessica.
I took the AP Chemistry, English Literature, English Language, Spanish Language, and Statistics tests.
I'm not sure you took enough of them. There's a couple others you wanted to take and you skipped on. Yeah. So, tell me, Grant, which ones did you take?
I took Economics, Government and Politics, and I took biology as well.
Okay, so what is the process for, you take a class, it's an advanced placement class, so it's supposed to be accelerated learning, higher level. It's essentially, if you pass the AP test, you get college credit for those classes. What's that process like? How long, what are those classes like, Jessica? How hard are they? And what are the tests like?
Well, we take AP classes, so everything that's on the AP test, we start learning at the very beginning of the year. So by the time we take the test, it's supposed to cover everything that we've learned all through the months that we've been in school. So we've been studying for these tests for basically an entire year with lectures in class and more extensive homework assignments outside of class.
Mm-hmm. Are the classes hard, Grant?
They're very challenging, and there's a huge time commitment to do all of the work and prepare for these classes. And like what Jessica said, on day one, that's when we start learning the material, and that's really when we start preparing for these tests. Mm-hmm. Now, in the few weeks leading up to the tests, that's when we're really reviewing all of the material and practicing for the exams. But it's not just about the few weeks before the exam, it's the months prior where we are learning the information.
So what are the tests like?
They're very intense, they're very stressful.
How long does each test take?
About 3 hours.
3 hours, no kidding. And is it like the SAT test, to fill in bubbles, answer questions, use a booklet, that kind of stuff?
It's multiple choice questions and free response essay questions. So you're doing that for 3 hours. It's a really intense test. Yeah.
What's it like? Is it nerve-wracking?
Well, at least for me, when I opened up my booklet for my free response questions, I almost felt like a weight come across the room, as you could just see that the students, as soon as they opened up and saw those answers, they knew that it was really serious, that these are just some difficult questions.
So why take these classes? Why take these tests? What are you doing? Why are you doing this?
Well, it helps us for colleges, for applying, and it's also a huge investment to make sure that we can get out of these introductory courses in college. It helps a lot of students graduate on time, helps students pursue dual degrees or very challenging degrees like engineering. And even though there's a lot of time we need to put into these tests and these classes, they can help really pay off by allowing us to graduate on time or even early in some instances.
But some of it is you're bolstering your college application. The more of these you've taken, the better you've done on it. You get a grade point average that's above 4.0. So that's a big part of the motivation, isn't it? Is to position yourself to have more choices when it comes to going to college?
Yes, especially for juniors. So Grant just explained how it affects seniors, but for juniors, they need the AP scores for their college admissions because they're not into college yet. They have to demonstrate that they've mastered their subjects on their college application. So what the AP does is that it standardizes the grades they have in their AP classes, because all students around the country and around the world are taking the same test. Because an A at a lower performing school might not be worth the same as an A from a higher performing school where the academic curriculum is much more rigorous. The AP assesses students' knowledge on common ground to make a fair comparison.
So it sort of evens out that. I mean, we all know schools where you can get an A, just easier to get an A than, there are even classes within a certain school where it's easier to get an A than other classes. So this is like the great equalizer, is that what you're calling it? So why did you do it? Why did you take these classes, Grant? Why did you do this?
Well, I was looking for a challenge. I wanted to stay busy in my academic work, but I also wanted to prepare for college. College admissions are incredibly competitive, and anything to help out with that is something that I'd be interested in. And I took these classes with the intention of pursuing a dual degree in college. And I know it's very difficult to graduate on time, especially if you're trying to pursue a dual degree. So I use these tests as a way to get myself credit so I can enter college with some credits already, so I would more likely graduate in 4 years.
Okay, so what's the testing environment like? That was a nice image you had of this weight wafting across the room as people started taking the test. What was the physical environment like? I mean, it was a long time ago when I took the SAT, but I remember sitting at a long table and everybody facing the same direction and was spaced a certain way. What's the setting like where you're taking this test?
Well, for Mills, we usually use the California Teachers Association building. We call it the CTA building. It's right next to the school. It's a big room filled with lots of tables. Some are square, some are round, and some are really long. But Mills always has 4 proctors walking around and hovering above the students. So it makes for kind of a really serious testing atmosphere, and all the students know how important it is, especially with all these adults walking around and monitoring us.
So I want to start to get to the issue of what caused the decision by the Education Testing Service to invalidate the tests. You were sitting at round tables. Were you facing each other? Were you sitting next to each other? How close are you to each other?
Well, for 2 of my 3 tests, I was seated in an area where the students were 5 feet apart and all facing the same direction. For 1 of my tests, I was seated at a smaller rectangular table. And I don't know the exact distance from the other student, but I would estimate that it was around 5 feet. If it was a rectangular table, I would be at one end and he would be at the other end. And so it was incredibly difficult. If there was going to be cheating to occur, it would be incredibly difficult. But apparently, according to the ETS's rules, that would not be allowed. So okay. They haven't taken into consideration any other factors like the additional proctors that we had at Mills High School.
Yeah. We're going to get into the allegations and the decision by ETS in a second, but we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, and you stick around too. We'll be right back.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to the game. I'm Mark Simon. We're talking about advanced placement testing, and Mills High School recently 286 of the students at Mills took the tests, and they were invalidated, 600 plus of them by ETS, the national organization. We're joined by Nancy Fineman, an attorney with Cotchett, Pitre, and McCarthy, who's advising the students on what they might do next. Jessica Liang, Mills High School graduate going to Yale, and Grant Murphy, another Mills High School graduate going to Emory University. We were just talking about the environment. ETS's allegations are that the rules were not followed about how the testing is supposed to be administered, specifically how people are supposed to be seated. You didn't find out about this until very late in the game, but they have offered the opportunity to retake the test. Why not retake the test, Jessica?
Because a lot of the students who are looking into this issue have done their research, and we found that in a 2008 court case with Tribuco Hills High School, the students were in the same position as we were, but they lost their case because too many students had signed up for the retake. So we believe that by having a lot of students sign up for the retake, that will hurt our case too.
Is that a fair judgment, Nancy? If you resolve your dispute before it's resolved by the courts, then you vacated your right to have a dispute?
People hate lawyers because we always waffle on answers, and it's unclear. But I have been contacted by the ETS attorney. I asked him if ETS and College Board would tell these students that if they retook the test, there would be no negative consequences to challenging the first test, and College Board and ETS would not give that type of reassurance to the students. So right now, to me, it's an open question.
So let me ask all three of you to address this question. ETS's argument is that they set these standards for seating, for distance, for how people look, to protect the integrity of the test. In other words, it isn't just about whether or not there's cheating, but whether or not there's the appearance of cheating or the opportunity for it. What's wrong with that position? What's wrong with them saying, you know, it's important not only, I like to paraphrase Justice Brandeis, that it not just be fair, but it appear fair?
Well, let me try to answer it first, and I'm sure Jessica and Grant have some things. Nobody doubts that the tests need to be fair, that there needs to be integrity. There needs to be, as Jessica says, kind of the standard, everybody gets the same test. But they're given to students across the country. There's no way to do a standardization. And the key is...
You mean a standardization of seating?
Of everything. If you take it here at Mills High versus somewhere in the Midwest, they're just going to be different conditions. The important part is integrity of the test. And the AP rules, the manual is about 183 pages. There are multiple controls to make sure that there's not cheating. And it's the district, who I represent, actually trying to help the kids, position that there are multiple controls, including the proctors and the whole testing environment, but gives that integrity to the test. And without any facts at all to suggest any type of misconduct, both College Board and ETS have said there's been no finding of any type of misconduct, that it's wrong to invalidate the test scores.
Well, there's been no finding. Has there even been an investigation into whether or not there was cheating at Mills on this particular occasion? Grant?
As of now, the College Board and ETS are refusing to do an investigation of whether or not there was cheating.
They acknowledge that they haven't even made that kind of an inquiry?
They have done an investigation. What the scope of their investigation is, I think they think it's much more robust than the school and the students do. But they have said they have no evidence of cheating, that there isn't even a whisper from our investigation, from what we've heard, of any cheating at all. Unlike other situations where there have been schools where tests have been invalidated because of seating irregularities, there's been admitted cheating that went on. Let
me go back and address the question of the environment in which you were taking the test again. Is cheating really even possible? I mean, I suppose people could be signaling each other from across the table, but do you know for sure you're going to be sitting across from one individual versus another, or is the seating entirely random, or do you get to say to your buddy, come on, let's go sit at this table? How does it work?
Well, the seating's alphabetical, so you really don't have a say who you're sitting next to. It's also incredibly well monitored by the proctors. And for a few of the tests, the multiple choice questions are scrambled. So even if you were to directly look at the person across from you and copy their answers, you wouldn't get the answers correct because the answers are different.
So if you and I are sitting and facing each other, we're not taking the same exact test.
For some of the tests, that's true.
Yeah. Jessica, is it possible? Do you think it's possible there was some cheating at Mills?
I don't think so at all. With so many proctors walking around and them watching us, there's no way. Plus, the proctors made sure that we always had everything face down on the table, whether it was a calculator or our test booklet. Once I inadvertently lifted it while I was reading, just out of instinct, and the proctor came over and he was like, please put it down. You are not allowed to have anything lifted up from the table.
Shouldn't you be angry at Mills for not following the rules in the ETS handbook rather than angry at ETS?
Well, there is some blame to be put on Mills because of the because these rules are in the ETS handbook or the AP handbook, but they're on page 46, and it's an incredibly long handbook.
Pages, is that what you said?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Multiple pages.
It's like the baseball rule book. Do they explain the infield fly rule in there as well? So it's a long...
It's an incredibly long document, and to have such a harsh punishment and to have such severe implications on page 46, and to have several people read over these and to not really notice that these are incredibly severe punishments. And one more thing I'd like to add is that Mills has limited resources. We didn't have access to the CTA building this year. Our gymnasium was under construction. The only facility that we really had available to accommodate these tests was the library. So we really didn't have many options.
Jessica, Grant's referring to being punished. How much harm is this doing you to not have these AP tests validated? Assuming you passed them all with flying colors, which of course we just naturally assume.
Well, I would have liked to have acceleration credit for Yale so I could minimize the length of my study there because...
By that you mean you would have already gotten credit for these classes at Yale?
Yes, and I would have to take fewer classes to graduate because a year at Yale costs nearly $62,000. And realistically speaking, that's not affordable at all. But because my parents wanted me to have a good education, they were willing to pay the price, thinking that maybe I wouldn't have to stay so long. But now with these canceled scores, that hope has kind of been swept out from under our feet.
We're going to continue to talk about this. Stick around, we'll be right back.
It's been over 150 years since Wells Fargo first opened for business. Since then, we've enjoyed your community support, and we're passionate about returning it. Every day, Wells Fargo team members roll up their sleeves and donate their time to organizations and charitable groups throughout the Bay Area. Nationally, we've committed even more. In just the past 2 years alone, we've donated over $70 million to support schools and educational programs. It's a commitment we're proud of. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Welcome back to the game. We're talking about the AP testing controversy is probably the right word at Mills High School. We're joined by Nancy Fineman, attorney with the firm of Cotchett, Pitre, and McCarthy, advising the Mills students on some of their options. Jessica Liang, who is a graduate from Mills heading to Yale, and Grant Murphy, another graduate heading to Emory University. We're talking about ETS. So did you formally appeal to ETS? Is there some process for saying to ETS, gee, can you review this decision? I mean, is there an appeal process?
So, Mark, that's a really interesting question. If either Grant or Jessica had been accused of misconduct, there's an entire process that they could have followed as individuals. But when there's a school irregularity, the College Board and ETS just make a decision. There's no appeal, there's no process. So there is nothing that can be done. There was just an email from ETS saying the scores were invalid and offering a retest. We meaning the school district, has been in communication with ETS and College Board, asked them to reconsider, gave them more information, and as of a letter last night, they have refused.
So what are the options available? What are the what can you do?
Well, it may not be any surprises. As a lawyer, I look at legal solutions.
Yeah.
So we are looking at filing a complaint and asking the court for a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction, which in plain terms is asking that the College Board validate the test scores and report them to the colleges.
So in other words, give them credit for now, they can always withdraw it later, versus I suppose ETS's position is, which is, well, we'll invalidate them for now, and once we're done with the process, we'll let you know if they're valid later. But what does that do to your freshman year? I mean, in some cases, if you take enough of these classes, you're not having a freshman year. You could potentially be late freshman year or even a sophomore. So that doesn't really help you much, does it, if they decide that they'll get to this later?
It won't help me because I need to find out what classes I'll be taking my first semester of freshman year, and without knowing which classes I've already tested out of, I'm going to have to retake many of these classes because they are prerequisites. And so I can't move on to the higher level classes unless I've either tested with these AP tests and passed, or I just have to take the class again, and that will put me behind for graduating on time.
Mm-hmm. Jessica, what are you feeling? Are you angry? Are you frustrated? I mean, how does it feel to be having this? There's also sort of a broad brush, sort of the implication that cheating might have taken place because they did this. How does this feel to you?
If anything, I would say I feel a bit victimized because ETS and the College Board have confirmed that there was no student misconduct. And so we were being punished and being alleged as cheaters, even though College Board and ETS have said we are not. And we are receiving the punishment of having everybody's scores canceled.
Yeah. Grant, how about you? How does this feel?
Well, it is an incredibly disappointing situation, but I am feeling very hopeful right now. We've been getting a lot of public support. We've been getting politicians who have been supporting us as well. And I think that once we're really getting the word out on this, I think people will realize that this is an injustice and that College Board and ETS really need to reevaluate their decision.
Yeah. Nancy, can you foresee where this might end up? I mean, can you see an end in sight, or is it just, it's nice to have the support of the political officials, but they have no formal influence? It's not like there's legislation governing ETS or the College Board. So is there an end in sight other than the lawsuits you want to consider?
Well, I think that the politicians are trying to see if there's a legislative solution which won't help Jessica and Grant and their compatriots. And why we have courts is when people can't resolve their disputes informally, they go to court. So we are hopeful that there can be a court resolution if ETS and College Board won't change their mind. And we're very mindful of the time. It does take some time to put the right papers together to get all the legal niceties and technicalities done, but we're moving as quickly as we can to get resolution to try to help as many of the Mills students as we can.
What's the time frame you think there might be if a complaint's going to be filed? And it's important to say if one is, I understand.
Right, no, and what we're doing is I work with people that would have liked to have had it filed last week, as would have I, but we want to make sure that we had the right facts. So the first test is a week from today.
The first retest.
The first retest, and so we're hoping to get something done before then. Whether that's too optimistic, I don't know, but we're all very cognizant. I mean, I have a child that's leaving on Saturday to go back to a sophomore year. So kids are going back to college, off to college. School is starting at Mills at the end of August, and we want to move this as quickly as we can.
Do we know if any of the students are going to take the retest?
I believe that some of them
Some of them will. We've talked a lot about what this means to you. Can you speak about what it means to the juniors? You touched on it briefly. But what does it mean to the juniors who took these tests, Jessica?
Well, the juniors will either have comparatively poorer grades on their retake scores compared to their original scores.
Why is that? Because time has passed and you don't retain everything?
I think so, and because it's just not reasonable to cram an entire year's worth of knowledge into 3 weeks retest and then hope to score just as well. Mm-hmm. So they will either do more poorly or they will not have scores at all, because many juniors, knowing that this summer is a very critical time to get in some volunteer experience or internships, a lot of them are out of the country and they will not be able to retake the test. So when they apply for colleges, they will have no scores to show for all the work they've done in their classes. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't create a good impression, because colleges will see that they've taken the AP class, but then it looks like they've chickened out on the test, even though that's not true. Mm-hmm.
So in other words, it impacts their ability to where they want to apply and what their first choice might be, what stuff like that. Is that fair to say, Grant?
That's exactly what's happening. And like I said earlier, applying to college is getting more and more competitive, and any slight disadvantage can really hurt a prospective student's chance.
Let's talk just for a second about that, the whole environment. I mean, you talk about the volunteer work. having been through the process and because of the schools you're going to, I think we could say you've succeeded. But is the process sort of skewed a little bit? I mean, this emphasis on you've got to get into this school, you've got to take these classes. Is it a lot of pressure? What's that like?
There is a lot of pressure, and I know this time last year I was preparing for other things that would get me ready for college. I was preparing an application, I was working on other standardized tests, and I was trying to get more experience that would just kind of prepare me for being on my own, things that would prepare me, help improve my application, get more experience before applying to college. But right now, instead of doing that, a lot of juniors will have to restudy, and if they want to retake the test, then they'll have to retake the test. And after 3 months of not having any classes, having incredibly limited access to textbooks, many teachers aren't even here, so they don't have the access to the teachers. They will probably do not as well on the tests.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time. I appreciate it. Nancy Fineman, thank you for being here. Jessica Liang and Grant Murphy, both of you, good luck in college.
Thank you.
I hope this problem sorts itself out. And thank you for being with us, and join us next time on The Game.